Nelson Mandela is one of the most notable liberators in history. During the period in South Africa known as apartheid, Nelson Mandela became a leading figure and outlaw in the struggle against apartheid and ultimately helped see apartheid to its end. His influence over the civil changes in South Africa was critical to ending apartheid, and his role as a leader of such change led to him becoming a symbol of hope, resiliency, and freedom. Nelson Mandela was born on July 18, 1918, in Mvezo, a small village in South Africa. His name given to him at birth was Rolohlala Mandela, which translates to troublemaker, adding another layer to the characterization of Mandela as an outlaw. From a young age, Mandela was always outspoken, especially against radical discrimination, as he formed the African National Congress Youth League in 1944. However, just 4 years later, in 1948, a system of apartheid in South Africa began. Instituted by the National Party, apartheid was a period marked by racial segregation in South Africa and a disproportionate population of whites holding all of the power. Mandela at this time began to practice law and became more and more involved with politics in doing so. At the start of Mandela's resistance, he believed in nonviolent protests. He began to speak out against the government, calling for a non-racial state through non-violent fashions. This led to a trial that accused Nelson Mandela of treason. This period is also the first time Mandela is began to be seen as an outlaw, as he directly challenged the law, and although ultimately acquitted of these charges, it demonstrated his resiliency to continue his efforts against apartheid at all costs. However, after the slaughtering of many innocent Africans, such as the killings in Sharpeville, Mandela transitioned to a period of more violent tactics. Mandela joined the ANC's underground military wing called the Umkhonto Wesizwe, or Spear of the Nation. During this time, Mandela began to live underground in fear of being arrested again, another sign indicating his status as an outlaw. The military wing of the ANC did not target civilians, but rather vital infrastructure. The first attack of the Spear of the Nation was 5 bomb attacks on power stations as well as government buildings in Johannesburg and Port Elizabeth. Several months later, Mandela was sent by the ANC for military training outside of South Africa. However, upon his return back to South Africa, when Mandela returned from his trip in July of 1962, he was soon arrested, and so began the famous Riviera trials. During Mandela's trial, a police raid occurred where the ANC had set up its headquarters and found documents that outlined the group's plans of violent tactics and guerrilla warfare. The finding of these documents ultimately led to Mandela being convicted and sentenced to life in prison. During his trial, however, Mandela was offered freedom several times on the condition that he renounced violence, but he remained firm, refusing to do so. This showed his true dedication to such a movement and how, as an outlaw, he refused to bend on his morals. Mandela would spend the next 27 years of his life behind bars. He was allowed to send a letter once every 6 months, and in one of his letters written to his daughters, he discusses how much he misses them, but the necessity for this struggle. Mandela famously said, "When a man is denied the right to live the life he believes in, then he has no choice but to become an outlaw." Mandela not only spent decades in prison, but he embraced it as he knew it was due to a cause bigger than himself, and that this was an ideal he was willing to give his life towards. After years and years in prison, in February of 1990, under the presidency of F.W. de Klerk, the ban on the ANC was lifted and Nelson Mandela was released from prison. Mandela had at last transitioned from being an outlaw to being a free man. The period that followed was still marked by instability. There were large debates over the formation of a new constitution. A white mob descended on the town of Boipatong, killing over 40 people, and popular black leader Chris Hani was shot by a white man. However, there was a light in this darkness, as Mandela had become a symbol of active hope and resistance, and showed no signs of slowing down his fight against apartheid. His fight began to be marked with success, as he received the Nobel Prize in 1993. The very next year, the ANC won a majority in the presidential election, and Mandela became the president of South Africa. After Mandela's presidency, the ANC experienced another victory with another majority in the presidential election. Nelson Mandela then retired in 2004 and passed away peacefully on December 5, 2013. Nelson Mandela, as an outlaw, symbolized his dedication to an ideal of freedom, inspiring the country of South Africa as well as the world, and leaving a legacy of peace in South Africa due to his status as an outlaw. Mandela brought peace to a country marked by injustice and violence by being a champion of his community and taking the burden of being an ally.